Hello, my viewer, and welcome to this channel. This channel is objective in the sense that we want to bring to you, or I'm bringing to you, the topic that is very emotive, this topic of addiction. Now, you hear of addiction, and the next thing is, this is very, very emotive. It elicits emotions in many of us. Many of the families, many individuals are going through the same. You know, they have their kin, they have their friend, they have their colleague. People are suffering from various forms of addictions. Now, this is what I want to talk about. This is a conversation that I bring towards to us. Yes, you are remembering about your husband, your wife, your child, you know, your siblings who went right into addiction, and they were into this bondage, and finally probably some of them even died, succumbed out of addictions. This is how serious and how emotive this can be. But I'm here to tell you, encourage you, that find strength, find comfort, that yes, it happened, but how privileged are we to know about this, so that we can now tell somebody else. We can share with our friends, we can share with our colleagues, and tell them, look, that gentleman there went through the same, but he finally, victoriously and successfully got out of this. So I am bringing you a message of hope. I'm bringing you a message of comfort, that you who is struggling right now, you're struggling to get out of it, find hope and strength that someone else has gone ahead and even walked out of addiction, and particularly substance use disorders, successfully and victoriously. Oh, I didn't tell you, I forgot to tell you that I have done 11 years clean of drugs now. And I'm still going strong. I'm going strong, I'm walking strong. I will give you some secrets about this, how I got out of this, and how I'm sustaining even to continue walking sober. Besides, come along now, I want to invite you so I can share with you my story. Now, this is Benjamin Rundu. Benjamin Rundu is born in a family of 7. I'm the 4th child, if you like, the middle child. A set of 4 boys and 3 girls. Raised in a decent Christian family that subscribes to the Seventh-day Adventist faith. I was lucky to be born in an urban setup way back at the coast in Mombasa, because my parents worked there, and therefore I went to school down at the coast. While at school, I remember very well, I was just raised as a normal kid. Mine is a very average family, not so wealthy a family, not so poor a family, but we are somewhere in the middle, and therefore I am privileged to come from this kind of a family. And one thing I will tell you is that I was lucky and I was privileged to be raised in a Christian family. That to me is very, very important. At least I was introduced to God when I was a little boy, a little child. I grew up knowing who God was to me, and therefore I count myself blessed and lucky and even privileged that I got to know my Creator way back when I was a child. This will play later on when I will be sharing with you my story on how I got out of addiction, and that is why I'm emphasizing and talking about this particular God and this particular faith that I subscribe to. I'm very proud of this. Now, friends, it was very good for me. It was very good while I grew, until I sat for my primary school exams, and I passed my exams well. I was privileged to join Hamisi High School in Mombasa. While at Hamisi, as I've mentioned, I do not come from such a wealthy family, but my parents were able to afford the basic things, you know. We had shelter, we had a roof over our head, we had, you know, clothings. We were able to afford at least a meal or 2 or even 3 at times in the day. So with that, my parents were able to take us to school too, you know. So that is how basic it was. I didn't go to a prestigious school in primary. It was just a municipal school. I'm proud of my school, Mikindani Primary School. So at Mikindani Primary School, I was this good boy. I was a very good boy. My teachers can attest to that, and our neighbors, my friends. But things got worse. Things got bad, not even worse, but bad when I joined high school. There was just a crazy kind of an urge that came when I joined high school, and I looked at my classmates, I looked at my schoolmates, most of those who had joined Form 1, and I looked a bit odd. I looked not like the others. Why? Because many of the students were wearing or were donning on this particular shoe that was fashionable then, and that is tafis. My parents, my dad could not afford tafis for me, and that meant I looked odd, a little bit odd, but I had a pair of shoes. Only that it wasn't fashionable, only that it wasn't like what many others were wearing. And therefore, now that is what brings us into how I got into this habit of doing drugs. I'll remind you, before I get into my story, that addiction is, out of research, World Health Organization categorizes addiction as a mental disease. Our own NACADA here in Kenya categorizes addiction as a mental disease. You know what? The American Society of Addiction Medicine now defines addiction as a chronic brain disorder, not just a mental disease like, you know, WHO or even NACADA defines it, but the American Society of Addiction Medicine defines addiction as a very, you know, it defines it in a very serious manner. It is so serious that it brings out the whole issue of addiction in a different perspective from how we look at it. And so, out of these definitions, we agree that addiction is a disease. It's a mental disease, a chronic mental disease, a chronic mental disorder. So in other words, it affects directly the brain. Remember, we have two types of addictions. We have the substance use addiction, or what we call the chemical addictions and the non-chemical addictions. Yes, as I join Form 1, I'll confidently and honestly share with you that I badly looked to a day when I would dawn on tafis. At this point, I'm asking myself, how can I raise money to get myself a pair of tafis? Because my dad cannot afford, and they're not willing to buy me any time, even if they would afford. So what happens? I hacked away on how I could get myself some money. I helped my classmates with their homeworks. Most of them were very lazy, you know, doing their homework. So I was like, okay, I can do this for you at some pay. So I would get some coins out of these, and I would start saving so that I would buy myself a pair. Unfortunately, I didn't save enough. I would save, but later on I would forget that I was saving for tafis. I would buy myself, you know, things that really didn't matter then to me. Because what mattered a lot to me then was a pair of shoes that is called tafis. So I found myself with no single penny on my pockets by the end of the term, and come to the second term, a friend, my classmate, suggests to me like, hey Benji, what about the tafis you're to buy? I mean, you're still on these kind of shoes you're wearing. And so I was like, I'll look for money. I will look for money, and I'm certain that maybe this time I'll be able to raise enough and buy myself a pair of shoes that is tafis. So what happened is that he quickly suggests to me that he would introduce me to someone where I would work for this particular person, and after working I would get myself some commissions or some pay, and out of that I'll be able to buy myself a pair of shoe. I was very fast in agreeing to that suggestion. I was so quick in accepting that offer. And yes, he took me to this gentleman who sold drugs, and he's a drug baron. I will not mention his name here, but yes, I was introduced to him and his network, and my duty was to sell heroin in particular, and as I sold heroin, I would get myself some commissions, and out of these commissions, I was now dry and home to, I was home and dry to buy myself a pair of shoes and settle down, Remember, my target, my objective is to buy it a fees. Do not forget, because I looked odd. I didn't look like other students. I wanted to look like many of the students around. And that to me was now the peer influence, the peer pressure, the pressure that came from, the people surrounding me, the environment I was in. Yes, there's no singular cause to addiction. But we have, genetics. Scientists have researched, and they're still researching, that genetics play a bigger role into contributing into one being addicted. We have mental health disorders, and then we also have environmental factors. So mine was particularly narrowed down to this cause, environmental factors. So because it got to me out of pressure, and while at it, I was here selling heroin. Remember, I have never done drugs. I do not know how they taste like. I have never known what heroin looks like. I only heard about, the dangers of sharing the same syringe, amongst 2 or more people. Now, here we are using the same syringe or sharing the same syringe amongst a group of 10 and above people. And sadly to say, most of them, all of them, are today 6 feet under. They died. But I'm here to tell my story, friends. It's because because of us sharing the same syringe, the effects were drastic on them, and they succumbed to STDs. But I'm here very healthy, and I thank God for this. To me, it's a privilege to live. To me, it is God giving me a second chance to share with you what happened. Yes, I got to know how to use heroin, and so my sales, of course, grew, because now I know the effects of heroin, and because I am myself a customer to the same. So now that affected my studies. It affected my studies in school, because I missed classes, I missed doing my continuous assessment tests, I missed my exams, and that resulted into being a concern, not just to the teachers in school, plus the administration in school, but even my own parents were very much concerned, and therefore a day is coming that I'm summoned, and the summon is about like being expelled from school. And therefore, one thing memorable to me during my expulsion while at the principal's office, I remember Muhammad Ali, my principal, mentioned to my dad, told my dad, Mr. Rundu, even as we expel your child, as we expel your boy, I would advise, take it from me as a good advice, that you take him to schools in the countryside. So who was my dad? He took in that positively, and he ran with that idea, because Mr. Muhammad Ali's argument was that in the countryside there was still no heroin locally, and therefore maybe I would do better, I would do well, while there. And so my dad was able to get a school for me. I was just lucky, because remember, you're being taken to a school where you don't have, a report for the last term, and therefore it wasn't very easy for him to get to school. But finally we got to school, and while at it, I opted for other drugs. Remember, there's one thing about addiction, and particularly substance use disorders. When you withdraw one particular drug of choice from an addict, then it is automatic they'll be looking for something else to keep them high, to make them feel the same way. And therefore, my option for choice of drug was marijuana, and of course I coupled that with cigarettes. I smoked so much of it. I smoked cigarettes. I remember I became a chain smoker. I would do more than 2 packets of cigarettes every single day, to the point of me doing nearly 5 packets of cigarettes every single day. That is how harmful, that is how bad it got. With weed, I smoked a lot of it. I smoked marijuana so much that I even thought, I could use my daddy's farm to plant weed and cultivate weed. Remember, I did this because I thought, of course, number one, my tolerance levels were increasing. I needed to feel the same way, but even as I feel the same way, I would take more and more, and so that again affected my studies. I was suspended. I got so many suspensions, and yes, I always look forward to these suspensions, because to me, a suspension will last for 2 weeks. While I teach, I was on holiday now doing drugs freely, because you have been formally given permission to be away of school. So yes, that affected my studies too, and of course now it came with expulsion and expulsion after expulsion. But before we go into, before we go deep into my story, I want to encourage you, my brother, my sister. I want to look at you and ask you to be strong. You also can make it. You also can be sober. I will tell you how I got sober later. But for now, because of time, please stay on board even as you look forward to the second episode. God bless you.